I don't remember exactly how old I was that year. Just the feeling, like I was a misprinted draft in a family book my mother had written long before I was born. My name is Emily Ross. I was born and raised in the suburbs of Charleston, South Carolina, where every lawn was neatly trimmed, fences were painted white, and neighbors always smiled but never asked anything that truly mattered. To the outside world, we were the picture of a successful, respectable family. My mother, Eleanor, was the principal of a prestigious private elementary school. My father, Leonard, worked in finance. We were two sisters. I was the older one, 6 years ahead of Julia. Julia was the perfect portrait my mother always wanted to display. From the moment she could talk, her voice sounded like crystal. By 5, she was playing classical piano while I was still struggling through my first music lesson. When I was in 4th grade and barely held a B in math, Julia was being praised for scoring perfectly on an IQ test designed for first graders. My mother adored perfection, but the terrifying part was, she didn't hide who she adored more. Every compliment, every affectionate hair stroke, every proud glance was reserved for Julia. Why can't you behave more like your sister, Emily? Look at Julia. Has she ever needed to be told something twice? With grades like these, what college do you think will accept you? Those words were never shouted. They were poured into my ears in a calm, icy voice, like a performance review. No yelling, just a quiet, sharp kind of disappointment that cut deeper than any scolding. My father, he tried. He was the only one who'd listen when I quietly retreated into a corner of the house, feeling like the leftover piece. Once, after I failed a literature test, he brought me a cup of cocoa and said gently, "It's okay, honey. I thought your essay was wonderful. Don't let the grade bring you down. Your mom just wants the best for you, in her own way." But he never said those words in front of her. Every time I tried to push back or simply showed I was tired, one look from my mother was enough to silence me. The older Julia got, the brighter she seemed. She didn't act arrogant. She was so innocent she probably never even realized she was the center of our mother's universe. Once, during dinner, my mother said, "Julia's been invited to perform a solo at the Spring Music Festival. And Emily, well, do you have anything new going on?" I swallowed a bite of dry food, throat burning. I had just been selected as a member of the school's photography magazine team. But after that comment, the excitement vanished. I gave a stiff smile. "Nothing special, Mom." Some nights, I'd sit in the darkroom, editing black and white photos I had taken during a club field trip. The frames held moments that were raw and honest, like the look on a child's face getting ice cream, or the wrinkled hands of an elderly woman carrying a donation bag. My mother never framed these on our walls like Julia's awards, but to me they were proof I existed. In my own way. I used to think that if I just tried harder, my mother would change. I imagined a day when she'd look at me with the same tenderness I saw in her eyes for Julia, but that day never came. Every time I came home from school, Julia was already seated beside Mom. Piano melodies floated from the living room. The kitchen always smelled like her favorite baked treats, prepared whenever she had something important coming up. As for me, on my 17th birthday, my mother forgot the cake. "You're grown up now. What are you expecting?" she said when I asked. "I have too much on my plate." She always had a good reason, but I was still her daughter. Deep inside, I was still that 6-year-old girl longing for a bedtime hug. So I started living at a distance. I learned how to do everything alone. I stopped telling her about the photos I took or how my friends appreciated me. Eventually, I realized it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that I would never fit into the mold she had in mind. I used to believe that once I left that house, everything would change. What I didn't know was, some wounds, no matter where you carry them, follow you silently, until you're brave enough to cut them off at the root. That journey began on a regular morning, shattered by a call from the hospital that tore apart the fragile balance I'd tried to maintain. It was the day I learned. To save the one I loved, I'd have to let go of the blood that once called itself family. I started living by my own orbit at 18, the day I submitted my application to the Visual Arts College in Asheville, North Carolina. It was the first place I picked without asking my mother's opinion. It was also the first decision that made her stop speaking to me for nearly 2 months. That fall, I left Charleston with a worn suitcase, an old Canon camera my dad had bought with his year-end bonus, and a quilt passed down from my grandmother. On the long-distance bus ride, I looked out the window and saw my reflection blur into the trees, turning red and orange. There was something both freeing and heartbreaking in knowing no one was waiting for me on the other end, but no one was holding me back either. In Asheville, I rented a tiny 12-square-meter room, lived off instant noodles, and spent most of my time capturing what others overlooked: the cracks on weathered brick walls, the tired eyes of a night paper vendor, wildflowers pushing through the sidewalk's edge. I felt like I was starting to find my voice, not with words, but through images. I didn't tell my mother about it. At a sophomore student exhibition, someone stopped in front of one of my photographs. A portrait of an elderly man sitting quietly in the park, sunlight cutting through the trees. He wore a simple military jacket and stood in silence for a while before turning to me and saying, "The way the light falls, it's like he's waiting for someone he knows won't come." I turned to him, surprised and a bit hesitant. "You're military?" "Will Harris. I'm in the ROTC program, studying electrical engineering." We talked for a while and then he asked me out for coffee. That conversation lasted 3 hours, mostly me talking. Will listened with a rare kind of gaze. No judgment, no expectations that I needed to be anyone else. I didn't tell my mother I was falling in love. It wasn't until nearly 6 months later, during the holidays, when I brought home a photo of Will. She glanced at it briefly and said, "Do you think someone like that will ever give you anything worthwhile?" My father looked over at her and gently said, "He looks kind, driven." My mother scoffed. "Kind doesn't feed a family. That girl needs someone with a future, not a soldier who could be here today and gone tomorrow." I stayed silent. Anything I said would only sound like an argument. 2 years later, I graduated, and Will got stationed in Colorado Springs. Before he left, he proposed, with a simple silver ring with an amber stone. He told me, "I can't promise it'll be easy, but I promise you'll never have to prove your worth to me." I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding took place in a small mountain chapel with only close friends and his family attending. My mother arrived late, dressed in black, and didn't smile in a single photo. During the reception, when I invited her to raise a toast, she simply said, "I hope you know what you're doing." I didn't respond. Will squeezed my hand under the table, just enough to keep me steady. Will's family was nothing like what I had known. Loud, warm, always checking if I felt okay, if I needed anything. His mother made her traditional stew and served it to me in her heirloom porcelain bowl. When I accidentally spilled a little orange juice on the tablecloth, she laughed. "Just proves you're sitting in the right seat in this house." I nearly cried. A year later, I gave birth to our first son. We named him Lucas, after the fellow soldier who had saved Will during a near-fatal training incident. Lucas was born healthy, with thick brown hair and deep blue eyes. The moment I held him, I knew I'd never let this child feel like he wasn't enough. But Eleanor Ross, she remained an immovable mountain. She visited when Lucas was 3 weeks old. The moment she stepped inside, she said, "You still haven't lost the baby weight. Sitting like that'll ruin your hips. Let me hold him." I hesitated, then handed him over. She adjusted the blanket, lifted Lucas like a coach inspecting an athlete's posture. "How often are you feeding? Listen, you need to stick to a schedule or he'll get spoiled. And don't hold him too much. Babies get too used to it and that'll make things hard later." I listened without replying. Whenever she visited, I turned into that 12-year-old girl again, scolded for wearing mismatched flip-flops to school. Before leaving, she said, "He's adorable, but he looks too much like Will." I wasn't sure what she meant, but it didn't sound like a compliment. Later, I called my dad. "Do you think Mom ever believed I deserved anything at all?" He sighed. "You know your mother. She's tough, hard to please, but she's still your mom." I let out a quiet laugh. "Well, I'm a mom now too. And I swear, Lucas will never grow up feeling like he has to be someone else's copy just to be good enough." Life wasn't easy after that. Will was away on duty often. I worked as a freelance photographer while raising our son. But through all the diapers, deadlines, and sleepless nights, one thing became crystal clear. My happiness didn't come from my mother's approval. It came from my son's eyes every time he called me Mom. I thought things had finally settled, until the day Lucas had the accident. A soft, sunny day. The front door flew open. Then the sound of sirens tore through what should have been just another quiet afternoon. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about family, love, and duty had to be rearranged. I didn't know what was coming next, but I was absolutely certain of one thing. No one, not even my mother, would stand between me and my child. Not when he needed me the most. That morning started with frantic knocking. I was folding Lucas's clothes in the bedroom when I heard footsteps rushing across the wooden hallway. I opened the door. 2 men in uniform stood upright, hats perfectly straight, eyes heavy. They didn't have to say a word. My knees buckled. A neatly folded flag was handed to me. The young soldier's voice cracked when he mentioned, "In the line of duty in Kandahar, and his ultimate sacrifice for the country." I don't remember how many times I nodded, or how long I sat on the floor hugging that flag, as if I could squeeze Will back to life from each crease in the fabric. What I do remember is that, in the next room, Lucas was coloring a picture of a spaceship. He was giggling to himself. He didn't know yet that the one person who always praised his scribbles would never come home again. Lucas was only 5. Every morning he asked why Daddy didn't call anymore, why the videos from Afghanistan had stopped showing up in the voicemail, why he couldn't use the phone to say, "I miss you." I had no answer gentle enough to shield him from the truth. A month after the funeral, I left Colorado Springs and moved to Greenville, a small town in South Carolina, where I found a clerical job at a local elementary school. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to keep a 2-bedroom apartment near Lucas's school. Each morning, I brewed coffee with Will's old machine, packed lunch for my son, and drove him to class in Will's car. We learned to live without him through every small thing. The familiar laugh, the scent of his shirts after work, the dry jokes that always made me laugh, no matter how tired I was. Lucas would sometimes hug his pillow quietly and whisper, "Mom, if I dream about Daddy, does that mean he misses me too?" My voice cracked every time. "Yes, sweetheart. Daddy always misses you." I thought I had found some rhythm again, until Eleanor Ross stormed into our lives like a pre-scheduled hurricane. She showed up in Greenville driving a shiny black SUV, walking into my tiny apartment with eyes scanning the walls like she was inspecting a storage unit. "You're really living here?" I didn't answer. "On a school clerk's salary? What about your photography career?" "Lucas needs stability," I replied, still picking up toy boxes, so he wouldn't trip. Stability's moving back near family, not clinging to a 2-story shoebox like this. I didn't offer her anything to drink. Eleanor made her own tea and sat down like she still owned my house. Then came the unannounced visits, weekly, without warning. Sometimes she arrived while I was shampooing Lucas's hair in the tub. Other days, she brought advanced math workbooks and made him study even though he was exhausted from school. He's already behind Julia's kid. Same age, and that one's reading chapter books. What about him? Lucas sat in silence, eyes down. I clenched my fists until they turned white, but still didn't push back. Every time I reminded her that my son needed rest, or that I could teach him myself, she'd sigh, full of pity. You're letting grief cloud your judgment. Monday, I came home to find a brand new bunk bed in Lucas's room. Shiny, untouched. On his desk was a brand new iPad and a note. From Grandma. Because you deserve better. I called immediately. Mom, I don't agree with this. You didn't ask me. You're broke, Emily. Don't let pride keep your son from what he deserves. It's not about pride. You're teaching him that I'm not enough. Silence on the other end. You're being petty. But she didn't stop. She bought expensive clothes, sent birthday gifts weeks in advance, even waited outside the school just to take Lucas out for ice cream without telling me. One day, when I came to pick him up, he was gone. I broke down sobbing in the parking lot. That night, I knocked on her door, brought Lucas home, and said clearly, "You do not take my son anywhere without asking me, not ever again. I'm just doing what a good grandmother does, unlike you, busy, distracted, weak." I swallowed my rage. Lucas stood behind me. He didn't yet understand why adults spoke so coldly about one another. But that wouldn't last forever. I began to realize Eleanor didn't just want to help, she wanted control. Her concern was a disguise for constant interference, coated with slow drip criticism. My son had already lost his father. He didn't need to lose his mother, too. Just because I let someone else dictate how I raised him. That's when I started drawing boundaries. At first, they were small, limiting visits, managing what gifts were accepted. Then firmer. No more comparisons, no more forced advice. I never imagined standing up to my mother. But when you see a child watch you cry, because someone made you feel like a failure, you find your voice. Even if it's just a whisper in a storm. Even if it takes your whole life to learn how to speak it. That morning, the sky was bright blue, cloudless. Lucas woke up earlier than usual, muttering narration for a robot he was sketching in his notebook. "Mom, can I go biking with Danny and Sam today? Sam's dad is taking us to that new trail in Edgewood." I checked the clock. Still 2 hours before I had to be at the school office. "Bring your phone, wear your helmet, and be home before 4. Deal?" He nodded enthusiastically, then dashed off like the wind, his backpack bouncing behind him. I stood at the door, watching until he disappeared past the white fence, heart a little lighter, knowing he was starting to enjoy the childhood he deserved. 11:12 a.m., a strange number lit up on my phone. I picked up. "Hi, are you the parent of Lucas Ross?" The woman's voice on the other end was soft but trembling. "We're calling from Greenville Medical Center. Your son was in a bicycle accident. He's currently being taken into emergency surgery." Everything turned into a loud, buzzing noise. I don't remember how I left the house. If I locked the door, if I grabbed my wallet. What I do remember is the chill crawling down my spine when I saw 2 doctors in white coats waiting at the ER, their eyes full of warning. As a closed skull fracture, a broken femur, and part of his shoulder is shattered. Right now, we're working to control brain bleeding. His body's responding slowly, but his heart rate is stable. I sat outside the ICU for hours, hands gripping each other so tightly they bled. Every time a monitor beeped, my heart nearly stopped. Lucas lay motionless amid tubes, wires, and blinking monitors. The face that used to be full of mischief and light now looked swollen, pale. I gently touched his hand. His skin was cold. It stabbed right through me. I whispered into the silence. "Lucas, I'm right here. You're not fighting alone." I didn't leave the hospital for 3 days. Not once. Nurses changed shifts. Doctors rotated. The light outside the window shifted color from morning to dusk. But I stayed by his side, sipping cold coffee, eating dry sandwiches, and writing down every word the doctors said in shaky handwriting. On the 3rd night, I was drying my hands in the ICU restroom when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed the one name I least wanted to see. Eleanor Ross. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hey, Mom." Her voice didn't waste time. "Tomorrow's Julia's birthday. Come home early and help me get things ready. Can you make it by 10 a.m.? He froze. "Do you even know what's happening right now?" Lucas is in the ICU. His brain is still swollen. He hasn't woken up. I understand. But the doctors are monitoring him. I think you should make some time for your family, too. Julia's had this party planned for over a month. I gripped the phone tighter, my voice cracking. You're asking me to leave my son in the hospital so I can go blow up balloons and arrange flowers for Julia? Don't exaggerate, Emily. Everything will be fine. And if you can't show some responsibility toward your family, maybe you don't need my support anymore. I stood still in the white, echoing restroom. The sound of water running from the sink was sharp, almost violent. My voice dropped low, but every word was clear. Are you threatening to cut off help for my son if I don't show up to Julia's birthday party? Don't turn yourself into a victim, Emily. You always do this. Never think about anyone else. If you don't come, I'll have to reconsider everything, including the scholarship fund I set up for Lucas. I heard every word, but they didn't shake me. Then you should go ahead and start reconsidering. I hung up. No tears, no trembling, just a strange lightness, as if an invisible chain had finally snapped. Back in the ICU, the nurse was adjusting Lucas's ventilator. He's a strong kid, she said gently. We're monitoring closely. There's improvement. I held my son's small hand, and for the first time, I felt like I was holding something stronger than threats, legacy, or money. The right to be a mother. Tomorrow might be Julia's 30th birthday, but I wouldn't be leaving the hospital. Not out of defiance, because my heart belonged in only one place, beside the child fighting to come back. If that meant my mother would sever everything, let her. But I wouldn't sever myself from the boy who had already lost his father and was now teetering between life and death. Lucas is why I exist. Eleanor? She's the reason it took me 10 years to learn how to stand on my own. I won't take one more step away. The phone buzzed again after I hung up. Notifications rolled in, texts from Mom, from Julia, then Richard, Julia's husband, and even Aunt Carol, who hadn't contacted me in 3 years. The family is hurting from your absence. Julia won't stop crying. Mom has a migraine from the disappointment. Your sister only turns 30 once. Can't you sacrifice a few hours for her? I quietly powered off the phone. Inside the ICU, Lucas remained still. His faint breaths came through the ventilator. Each number blinking on the screen was its own kind of torment. I sat next to him, hands locked tight, my mind circling exhaustion and tension. Nurse Caroline came in and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Emily, you need a short break. I'll sit with Lucas, just 15 minutes. If anything happens, I'll call you right away. I didn't nod, didn't speak. I simply stood like a machine, walked down the brightly lit hall and poured myself a cold glass of water in the family waiting room. I stared into the large window. My reflection looked pale, hair stuck together, dark circles under my eyes, as if I'd aged 10 years in 3 days. The phone sat quietly on the table. I tapped it and unlocked the screen. One unread message from Mom. If you don't come back, don't expect another cent from Lucas's scholarship fund. Don't force me to sever this blood tie. This time, there was no shaking, no rage, no panic. Just a strange peace settling in, like a part of me had been waiting for this moment all along. I opened my contacts. Mom was right there. I stared at it for a few seconds, then tapped delete contact. No dramatic music, no spotlight. Just a tap. I walked back into the ICU. Lucas was still the same, but when I held his hand, one tiny finger twitched. I wasn't sure if it was reflex or something more, but my heart slammed against my chest. I pressed my forehead to his and whispered, "You're not alone. Even if I lose everything, I'll still be right here." The door creaked open. My dad stood there, holding a paper bag. "I figured you might need fresh clothes. Brought coffee, too." I gave him a faint smile, a rare one. I deleted Mom's number. He didn't react right away. Just set the bag down on the table and sat next to me. She says you're ungrateful, selfish, even. But I think maybe you're finally thinking for yourself. I let out a dry laugh. 35 years of being told to be thankful for every dollar, every compliment, every dinner invitation that came with strings attached. I think I'm trying to teach my son a different way to live. He looked over at Lucas. His eyes were glassy. He said nothing. When he left, I returned to the chair beside my son's bed and pulled the blanket back over him. The clock read 11:47 p.m. Julia's birthday party must have been over by now. No fireworks echoed from outside, but in that silent room I could feel something had ended. Not my relationship with my mother, her control over me. Somehow, I felt free and ready for whatever came next. As long as I got to be here beside the child lying in that bed. The one person who'd never asked me to change, to be loved. Thursday morning in the ICU began with a strange calm. No more erratic IV pump sounds like yesterday, no more heart rate spikes on the monitor jolting me awake in the dark. The numbers had stabilized. I sat beside Lucas, both hands on the blanket, eyes fixed on his face. Caroline came in, her gaze softening when she saw I still hadn't slept. Emily, he's responding better to the lower sedation dosage. We may see progress today. We'll be monitoring closely. I nodded. My throat felt raw, but my voice held steady. Can we take out the ventilator yet? Not yet, she said. But if Lucas starts breathing stronger on his own, the doctor might consider it. Just keep talking to him, okay? I turned to Lucas. His face was still swollen, but no longer bruised like the day before. I leaned in close and whispered in his ear. Just like every other night. Lucas, it's Thursday. Your dad used to say Thursdays were for warriors. It's the day you push a little harder. I believe in you. His hand didn't move, but his eyes, Lucas's eyes, blinked once, slow but deliberate. I froze. As if on instinct, I squeezed his hand lightly. Lucas, it's Mom. Can you hear me? His eyelid fluttered again, more clearly. Then his thumb twitched, weak but purposeful. I jumped up and called out, Caroline. She rushed in. I pointed toward Lucas, trying to steady my voice. My son just reacted, clearly. She checked the monitors, tested his pupil reflexes. Her face lit up with quiet joy. You're not imagining it. His brain's showing clear activity. I'll call Dr. Patel. A few minutes later, the doctor arrived. After a thorough exam, he nodded. Lucas is beginning to regain consciousness. This is a very positive sign. I gripped my son's hand tighter, heart pounding. Lucas shifted slightly, his lips moving beneath the ventilator. The doctor spoke softly. If he can maintain natural breathing reflexes for the next few hours, we'll prepare to remove the tube. I leaned in closer, resting my cheek on his hand. I'm here, sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere. Lucas's lips moved again. This time, his eyes opened. Slowly, with effort but unmistakably. His pupils darted around for a moment before landing on me. I nearly collapsed from the wave of emotion. His eyes were sunken, but the spark in them was still there. Lucas, blink if you can hear me. He blinked. Once. Then again. I bent down, barely able to contain the smile fighting through my tears. My love, I'm right here. You don't have to be afraid. His eyelids dropped again, but the message was clear. Lucas was awake. The next morning, after completing all the necessary evaluations, Dr. Patel made the call to remove the ventilator. I held Lucas's hand the entire time. Each cough, each tiny spasm that followed the extubation made my chest tighten. But then, through ragged, raspy breaths, Lucas opened his mouth. His voice was hoarse, as if scraped across stone. Mom! I burst into tears. Right there on the spot. Yes, baby. I'm right here. He frowned a little, struggling to whisper. You didn't leave? I shook my head and pulled him into my arms. I've been here the whole time. Every minute you were sleeping. Lucas breathed slowly, then turned toward me. His lips were still pale, but his eyes shone brighter than they had in days. "You were right," and stopped. I hadn't expected to hear those words from a child who just clawed his way back from the brink. "What did you say?" "You didn't go back to her. You stayed with me." "You were right." I kissed his forehead, tears finally spilling over. "Yes. Even if they're angry. Even if I lose everything, I still choose you." Lucas gave a small nod, then drifted off, exhausted. I sat silently for hours after that. I didn't check my phone, didn't look at messages. The whole world seemed to shrink down into this one room, with the small heartbeat beside me finally steady again. And I understood. No party, no criticism, no amount of money could ever compare to that moment. My child had come back to me, not because of machines, not because of the best doctors, but because he fought. Because he knew I hadn't let go. We had chosen each other. A week after Lucas was transferred out of the ICU, I received a courier envelope with no return address. Inside was an updated copy of my mother's will. The bold print, cold as her voice, read, "Lucas Ross is no longer a legal beneficiary to any estate or trust owned by Eleanor and Leonard Ross. Effective as of..." No note, no sign of regret, just a legal notice. As if a 6-year-old who had just survived a medical crisis deserved to be punished for being loved properly by his mother. I set the papers down. No shaking, no crying, just a strange clarity, as if a fog had finally lifted from my eyes. Any lingering illusion about what family meant had already rotted away long ago. That afternoon, my dad called. His voice was slow, drained. "Your mom, she made her decision. I couldn't talk her out of it. I understand." "I'm sorry, Emily." "No need." I cut in gently. "I don't expect anything anymore. I just hope you stay in touch with Lucas. If that's what you really want." "I do. But your mom, she can't stop you from calling your grandson. If you let her, that's your choice." There was a long silence. Then he just said, "We'll try." The next day, I started selling my Canon L series lens kit, the one I'd held onto for years. It was a gift from Will, back when I won a student photo contest in Asheville. He had joked then, "I'm investing in a rising star. Just sign one for me someday." I listed it on a pro gear site with a simple note, "Excellent condition, selling quickly to cover hospital costs." A photographer in Raleigh wired the money within 3 hours. I stood there, holding the cash, eyes burning. Not because I missed the gear, but because I'd just sold a piece of memory to patch together my son's future. But in return, I started shooting again. No big contracts, no high-end conferences, just family portraits, kids' birthdays, small weddings and local churches. My calendar filled up week by week. Some days I'd leave my school admin job, rush home for a quick shower, then drive out to a party all the way down in southern Greenville County, camera swinging from one shoulder. I didn't tell Lucas. He was still recovering. Doing physical therapy 3 times a week, eating and sleeping irregularly, sometimes waking up from nightmares. One day after a session, he looked at me and asked, "Are you mad that I made you lose money?" I turned to him completely, took his hand. "Lucas, I can earn back the money, but if I lost you, there'd be nothing left worth earning." He nodded slowly. Didn't ask anything else. Around that time, Julia started texting. "Want me to take Lucas to school for a few days? I got tickets to a dinosaur exhibit. Heard Lucas is into that stuff. Mom told me to stay out of it, but I think you and Lucas are going through a lot." I didn't reply right away. On her 6th message, I wrote back, "Thanks, but Lucas isn't ready to see anyone who made his mom choose between him and them while he lay between life and death." Julia never replied again. I didn't hate my sister, but I no longer had the energy to pretend things could go back to normal. Indifference doesn't come from a single moment. It's a string of choices made while looking away. I drew firm boundaries. No surprise visits from Mom. No expensive gifts sent to school. No pickups or drop-offs unless cleared by me. I wouldn't let my son be around anything wrapped in the name of love that was really just a glittering leash. 3 months after the accident, I got a graduation portrait booking from a woman named Marlene. When I arrived, I realized she was one of Mom's old classmates. She didn't mention Eleanor, just said, "We chose you because they said you have a way of capturing real emotion." After the shoot, she slipped an envelope into my hand. Just a little tip. No one should be working themselves to the bone for being a single parent. At home, I opened it. Inside was $300 and a handwritten note. "I lived like you once. Keep your spine straight, Emily. Not everyone called mother is a safe place to lean." I folded the note and tucked it into my wallet. Not for the money, but because for the first time in months, I saw myself reflected in someone else, without having to explain a thing. Lucas slept deeply that night. I sat by the window, streetlights brushing softly against the curtains. In my hands was a list of scholarships at 3 public universities with the best STEM programs in the state. I added a note in the margins. "Tuition secured, 2029. Then wrote underneath, "Even without an inheritance, even without a sponsor, we're still getting there." And I believed it. Because everything I'm doing now isn't about proving anything to my mother anymore. It's about making sure Lucas grows up without ever questioning for even a second that he is loved. Unconditionally. The following summer, Lucas stood in our backyard, holding a pencil-drawn robot blueprint and a glue stick. He was taller, a bit thinner, but there was nothing left in his eyes of the child who had just returned from the edge of life and death. A faint scar still ran from his left cheek to his temple, a quiet line that reminded us time doesn't erase everything, but it also doesn't trap us where we were. "I named it Skywalker," Lucas said, eyes fixed on the half-built model. "Not because of Star Wars, but because it's gonna walk the sky for real." "In my 7th grade project," I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "Looks like it might need a little help from Mom on the steel frame." "I can learn basic welding," Lucas squinted. "I read about it, our school's shop class teaches it. I'll do it myself." I didn't stop him. I no longer interfered when he said, "I'll try." The accident had shifted every one of Lucas's limits, not backward but forward. He was starting to see clearly what mattered and what wasn't worth holding on to. So, was I? Lucas returned to school in the spring semester, on an adjusted curriculum arranged by the principal and his support team. 3 physical therapy sessions a week, 2 neurological evaluations, 1 peer recovery group. He didn't complain, only asked me once, "Mom, if I get too tired, will you be upset?" I froze mid-folding a shirt. "I'll only be upset if you keep pushing through exhaustion just because you're afraid of letting me down." Lucas paused, then smiled softly. "Then no. I'll stop if I need to." He wasn't the top student in his class anymore, but he was the one teachers watched most closely. Not because of performance, but because of how hard he showed up every day. Lucas started a small blog about his recovery, sharing it with a few classmates. One day, I read this line, "I used to think I was weak. Now I know. Weakness is letting others decide how you should live. I'm strong because I've learned to answer the question, am I worthy of love, even if I'm not perfect?" And the answer is yes. I printed that line and taped it to the wall above my desk, right next to the photo of Will and the black and white portrait I took of Lucas sleeping after his 2nd surgery. We lived simply. The apartment was still small, the furniture worn, but it was peaceful, and free of those quiet sighs from people who always wanted to fix how I raised my child. My mother never texted again. After the Will incident, she fell silent. Julia occasionally sent birthday cards, gift boxes, but I didn't let Lucas respond. Not out of anger, but because I needed time to see what was truly meant for him, and what was just obligation wrapped in shiny paper. One June afternoon, Lucas sat with his legs propped on a chair and asked, out of nowhere, Mom, can I choose my family when I grow up? I mean, choose who I call my people. I paused mid-wedding photo edit and turned to him. Are you thinking of someone? Like Miss Caroline, and Dr. Patel, and Mr. Darren, Principal's husband. He always gives me mints when I make it through the long hallway. I smiled. You can. Family doesn't always have to be the people who gave birth to you. Sometimes, it's the ones who stay when you need them most. Lucas nodded. Didn't ask anything else. But I knew that answer would stay with him. That fall, Lucas won the district-level STEM grant scholarship. I took a photo of him holding the award sign and sent it to his grandparents in Tucson. They called right away, voices trembling with emotion. Will would be so proud of you, Emily. And he'd be even prouder seeing you teach Lucas to love himself through action. I paused for a moment, pressing my lips together before tears could fall. I'm not perfect, but I made the right choice. That night, while I was clearing the dinner table, Lucas ran out of his room, holding a handwritten letter from the principal. A nomination for the Carolina State Science Summer Camp Scholarship for resilient students. I think I'll go next year, okay, Mom? Sure, if you feel ready. I'm gonna miss you. I'll be right here, and you can FaceTime me every day. Don't forget the mini camera I gave you. Lucas nodded and dashed off to start packing his bag, even though the camp was nearly 10 months away. I stood in the kitchen, looking around our little home. Family portraits of past clients and friends covered the walls. Under each one was a caption written in ink, chosen not out of obligation, but out of true love. My new life didn't begin with someone knocking on the door to apologize. It began the moment I stopped asking for approval from people who had never offered real love in the first place. The hardest things to let go of are often the ones we've carried far too long, even when they've only weighed us down. But once we set them down, we realize our backs were strong enough to stand tall all along. We just hadn't been taught how to release. That I'm teaching Lucas that every single day, and that is the greatest gift I've ever given another human being. Emily's story is a powerful reminder that true love never comes with strings or control. After years of manipulation shaped by favoritism and toxic expectations, she chose what mattered most, her son's safety and spirit. Despite the financial setbacks and estrangement from her blood family, Emily rebuilt her world with self-respect, firm boundaries, and unconditional love. In the end, she gave her son the most valuable legacy of all, the freedom to be his authentic self. What do you think about Emily's decision? Would you have done the same when faced with the choice between family ties and personal freedom? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.